Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, today's service, or the homily or the sermon, is really more of a dialogue today, driven by the responses that Isabella and Zoe have given to the question, what does it mean to be a good person? We heard a version of that answer in our reading from the Unitarian minister from long ago, and one about a little girl who said that not knowing exactly what happens when we're done living can sometimes make it hard to be a person. Early in the week, I sent these questions to Zoe and Isabella, and they've been thinking on them for a few days now. The questions are, if you were going to teach someone about what it means to be a good person, what would you say? Where did you learn this lesson? Is it ever hard for you to do the right thing? What makes being good difficult? What do you do when you need help? What's the best thing about being alive? And do you have any questions for me about the church or God or etc.? We flipped a coin in the green room before the service. And so, Zoe, you're up. Isabella, do you want to be seated and we'll wait? Thanks. Let's make sure your mic's on. So, the first question was, if you were going to teach someone about what it means to be a good person, what would you say? What's your lesson for all of these folks about what it means to be a good person?
A good person is consistent. They are always friends with you, and they don't just switch to talking behind your back the next day. They're always kind and not always nice. The kind thing is what is good for you, for nice can be whatever you want.
Oh, so those are good answers. I would like to know a little bit more. So I took the choice of not knowing what they were going to say today, and I'm glad about that. You talked about the difference between being kind and nice. And I'm planning on preaching on kindness in 2 weeks, and I need your help. So you talked about the difference between kind and nice. Can you tell me and the folks here a little bit more about what you mean when you say the difference there?
So kind can be what is good for you. So my parents, I wanted a donut every Sunday for breakfast. But they say this is being kind, not to give me a donut every day for breakfast because it would interfere with my lunch. And it's not a healthy, filling one either.
So, kind is something that has your well-being in mind, and nice is, we're just kind of on the superficial level. You talked about someone who says something behind your back. How do you know when someone's being genuine?
What does that mean?
When someone is being honest. When they mean what they say. How do you know when a friend is the kind of person who doesn't talk behind your back?
I don't know, but I know that I can trust them.
Okay, so it's about being a person you can trust. So you talked about a person who has your best interests in mind, a person, the difference between kind and nice, a person who is who they say they are. So I don't say, hey, how you doing, Zoe? It's nice to did you see Zoe today? Like that kind of thing. So I do what I say, and I have your best interests in heart. That's a good start. Where did you learn about that?
I learn it from everyone I meet. My friends, my family, and the church, and also people I don't like. For the people I don't like, I learn not to do that. And from my friends and family, if there's something that they do that I really appreciate, then I do my best to do that to others.
Can you think of something, let's say your family, can you think of someone in your family who's given you a lesson when you look at how they behave? Is there something that you want to do? You say, oh, that's a great example. I would like to be more like that.
My grandfather is really patient. My grandmother bosses him around a lot.
So we got cameras there.
But he always helps her and stays by her side.
Ah, patient. So you want to be like your granddad, patient. That's great. Okay. I forgot about the really important question, which is, when you say being a good person means doing what you say, being patient, being kind instead of being nice, being consistent. I think you said consistent. When do you have trouble doing those things? What makes it hard to do that?
So when everyone else is doing the wrong thing, it's easy to just play along and hard to stand up and say, guys, I think that we should help instead of make fun of, and that's hard when everyone else is doing the wrong thing.
What's the most common example in your life of when that peer pressure is happening? When do you see that the most? When you want to stand up and say, I don't want to take part in this, but it's hard to say that.
A lot in school.
Not if you don't want to.
No.
Nope, you're done with that one. That's fine. That's fine. What about when you need help? When you, look what's happening to the water. So, remember, squirrel, remember earlier we were shaking that water up, and it didn't help. It didn't help to just work harder or run around like a wild person. When you are having trouble being consistent or kind, when you're having trouble being patient, do you do anything that helps you?
A lot of times things are just going too fast and you can't think about what you're going to say before you say it. So if you just slow down and think about what you say before you say it, or just think about what happened after so that you can help someone who goes through that same situation, then you are someone that people can ask for help.
Oh, I like that. So you become a helper when you need help. What about that question, what's the greatest thing about being alive? That's a weird question, I know.
Being free, being able to make your own choices and decisions instead of just being maybe cooped up and not being able to make your own decisions. And then laughter. When you laugh with someone, you feel a special connection.
Oh, I really like that one. Do you think that we're different from the animals in that? So you talked about being free. Do you think a dog is free?
Well, there are some things that you do want to be attached to, like your family. But I think they have the choice if who they want to spend time with.
And so when they choose you, how does that make you feel?
Special.
Yeah. So if we're free, what I'm hearing you say is if we're free, then the decisions we make a big difference. So if I choose to spend my time with you or to be kind or give, it means even more than if somebody made me do it. I like that. What about questions? Do you have any questions for me about the church?
So as a minister, do you ever feel forced that you always have to do the good thing?
Yes. Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I'm afraid that sometimes I'm scared that people expect too much of us. That they think we're going to be more patient than really is possible, or that we're not people like everybody else. So yeah, sometimes I am. Yeah. Anything else? No? Well, thank you so much for taking part in this dialogue with me. Zoe, thank you. I'm really impressed, and I appreciate you allowing me to ask some follow-up questions. That wasn't part of the original deal, and so I'm really grateful. All right, Isabella, hi.
Hi.
The same routine here, okay? If you were going to teach this group of people a lesson about what it means to be a good person, we've got all different types of people, different ages, some of them are in different places in their life. What would you teach them if they were coming to your class on being a good person?
I teach them that you can feel if you're a good person. You can't just rely on the other people to tell you, hey, that was really nice, hey, you're a really good person. You can feel it too.
So when you say you can feel it, what do you mean? How can you tell without other people telling you? How can you tell when you're being a good person?
Sometimes when I help my parents and my sister doesn't, I feel like a little guilty that I'm helping them and my sister's not.
You feel guilty for helping?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I feel like I've been doing more around the house and I feel like she deserves to do the same amount of stuff.
Okay. What does the feeling feel like? How do you know that you're doing the right thing?
Because you can feel that sometimes to me it feels like I'm like floating on a cloud and I'm free and I can do whatever I want.
Interesting. Let's turn that question around. What does it feel like? Can you tell when you're not doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Me too. What does it feel like when you're not being the person that you want to be? What's that feeling like?
Sometimes when my sister is helping my parents and I'm not, I feel jealous.
Okay. So, where do you feel jealousy? Does jealousy live in your head, in your heart, in your hands? If jealousy was going to make a house in your head or your heart or your hands, where would jealousy live?
It would probably live a little between my heart and my head.
Yeah, that feels accurate to me. You ever heard us talk about a person named Ralph Waldo Emerson here?
No.
I'm going to fix that. So he was a minister in the 1800s in Boston, a Unitarian minister for just a little bit, and then he went to do some other stuff. But one of the big things he said was just what you said. So you came up with, it's actually great that you hadn't heard of him, because you and he came up with the same answer. He said you don't need a book or a church to tell you what being a good person feels like. He said we have what's called a moral sentiment, which is a more fancy way of saying you can feel in your heart whether you're being a good person or not. And he said that everybody is born with that. Do you think everybody is born with that ability to feel whether you're being a good person or not?
Yeah.
How do you think you practice that? How do you get better at feeling that?
You can help more. You can, maybe if you see a piece of trash, you can pick it up.
Okay, so by doing it, you get better at it. Like if I was going to learn to ride a bike, it's probably better to ride a bike than read a book about riding a bike. Yeah, right. Where did you learn these lessons about helping and being able to feel in your heart? Where did you learn them?
A lot of different places. I've learned it from church, my family, my friends, school, Girl Scouts.
That's great. So it sounds like being in a bunch of different communities has helped you.
Yeah.
Do you think that do you think you would have come up with it on your own? If you were born all by yourself in a little room and you never met anybody and they pushed food in through the door and you'd never met a person, do you think you would have the same answers?
No.
No. We're going through an example of this guy Plato a long time ago. So what do you do when it's hard? What makes being a good person difficult?
Sometimes it's hard to, like if someone's being bullied, sometimes it's hard to stand up for them because you've got like the rest of your school is like your army, and you're like this one soldier
And you feel like it's you
against.
versus them.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's, both of you mentioned school and bully. Is that one of the common things you think you have to do in your fight to be a good person? Is that one of the big challenges?
Yes.
Yeah. What helps in that? What helps you stand up for other people when they need help?
Sometimes I like to write, I make pop-up cards and I give them a card, and sometimes before I give them the pop-up card, because sometimes they're being bullied while I give them the card, I take a deep breath and then walk up and say, hey, I've heard you're being bullied or going through a rough time, here's a card I made for you.
I think that's a really great response. What happens when you do that?
It makes me feel good.
Yep, so now that you're feeling it, like you mentioned, you're consistent with your philosophy around this. What do you think happens to them? What do you watch happen to that person when you give them a card?
Their smile becomes like half of their face, and it's like humongous.
Huh. So you can tell just by looking at them that it made a difference.
Yeah.
That's great. What about the question about the best thing about being alive? What do you think the best thing is about being a person?
That you have people that love you, that surround you every day, especially Sundays, and yeah.
Huh. How do you know that people love you?
Because you can tell if somebody's standing up here like I am right now, if you make a mistake, you can tell nobody's laughing or giggling, because there's some people that might not like you in the world that are laughing right now because if I make a mistake, and there's some that aren't.
Yeah, this is a pretty good audience. And I mean that in that, kind of we look out and everybody here, the truth is, most of these people would be terrified of doing what you're doing. But yeah, isn't it wonderful? You look out and they're listening. They didn't have to come here today, but they're listening and they really do appreciate what you're saying. And I don't think you've made any mistakes, but if you did, that would be okay too. That's church. That's great. Well, what do you have any questions for me about church or this place?
Yes. Why did you decide to become a minister at this church?
At this church? So I grew up here in the Dallas area, and I became a Unitarian at my college in Sherman, Texas, at Austin College. And when I was there, I went right to seminary after that. That's where you go to school to become a minister. And I came back to Texas, and I was working at a church near Austin. And I had always heard that this was a really good church. And I thought, one day I'll be a member there. I'll go to that church. That would be nice. And I was at a convention, like a minister convention. It's the most boring thing you could possibly imagine. And I ran into Reverend Cantor. And Reverend Cantor said, I'm transitioning from being the associate minister to the senior minister. This position's opening up. I think you should apply. And I thought, well, that's nice. He thinks I'd be good at it. You know what I found out? He said that to like 10 other people. He'd been going around to anybody he thought would be good at the job and saying that. But I applied, and I got the job. But the reason I wanted to be here is because I really do believe, I think this is the best Unitarian church that I've ever experienced. Because this church is thoughtful and kind and generous and takes this really seriously, but still can laugh. And that's what I really like about this church. Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you so much, Isabella, for your time.